Hello everybody, my name is Aceface, hope you guys are all doing well. I wanted to talk to you guys about an announcement that CCP made with the FanFest update or update blog they posted. That was particularly the reversion of the Surgical Strike update that happened in 2020, or at least partial reversion of it. Now, before we get into this, I just wanted to announce the winners of the previous skin giveaway for the Vargas Scope Syndication skin right here. Foxfire 0031, the Dark Logan, and Beach FPV. You guys are all going to get this contract to you in due time. Alright, let's get into this. So, what happened is that the Surgical Strike here is an update that occurred in 2020. And what it did is that a lot of or pretty much all modules that we've got that provide resistances to your ship, I think it's particularly I'm not sure about damage controls, but at least I'm pretty sure, I know it's like multi-spectrum hardeners like these, and the armor multi-spectrum coatings, they were affected. Not sure about damage controls, but at least a lot of modules, pretty much all modules, I think, they had their resistance bonuses that they provide, they were nerfed. And the reason why they had this was that it was like a thing with nullsec meta and with lots of capitals, is that they often had so good resists that they were becoming invulnerable because all these force auxiliaries, they were able to really rep them so hard that they are basically invulnerable, because if you've got good resists, you're going to be having your incoming remote reps from other people be really high. And force auxiliaries, they're like capital logi ships or capital healing ships, so they're really powerful by default, and then having good resists are going to make you almost invulnerable from time to time. So that's why CCP, they wanted to sort of reduce the amount of quote-unquote semi-invulnerable ships that existed by just flat out reducing the resists profiles of ships by nerfing the modules. As you can see right here, they mentioned this. This was meant to reduce the power of capitals during the era of super umbrellas and increase the chance of scoring kills even on the losing side of a fight. Sort of make it so that all fights involve some loss and not completely no losses whatsoever. But the thing is, there were multiple changes that have occurred since then. First off, I think that there was some change that occurred when it comes to logis, that they're less effective the more on the same target occur. But then also a really big one is that there's a lot less capital ships in general nowadays because of the increased prices of capital ships in general. Like dreadnoughts, they cost how much, 3-4 times more than they used to cost. So now Revelation, the capital ships, they're much more expensive than they used to be. These used to go for $1 billion ISK. I can't remember the price of the force auxiliaries, but ships in general, they're a lot harder to come by. The intention of the nerf was to sort of nerf capital ships. But the thing is, capital ships are also nerfed in another way, that they're harder to get. Then you also got the reduction of the remote reps when there's multiple remote reps on one person, being a bit diminishing returns as well. So that's why CCP decided to partially revert this Surgical Strike change. And I'm really glad about that, because it's got multiple implications on my personal side of gameplay, but also many other people's side of gameplay. They mentioned in the dev blog is that they're going to be reducing by half, I think it was. So this is here, to the end, resistance modules that have had half the resistances they lost return. So we'll still not have as good resists as we had before the Surgical Strike update, but we'll still be having more than we have currently. So this is something I really look forward to, because they mentioned stuff like low sec and wormholes, often gameplay which you not at all as involved with capital ships as you would have in null sec, where there's a lot of sub-capital battles. They're going to be just overall feeling quite weak right there. So they're going to be suffering because of that Surgical Strike update. So now they're going to be slightly reverted, partially reverted. And also for me, who's a bit of a high-sec person who does a lot of mission running, but also especially biggest of all, Abyss. Abyss, really, this is something I think especially market people should keep an eye on now with this new update. And I can imagine already this, I'm quite late to this, because this was actually released quite a week ago, but I was just thinking about how excited I was and all the implications from this until now. I wanted to talk to you guys about it, because this is going to change a lot with the Abyss, because first off, it's going to make Abyss ships in general be quite a bit cheaper. I used to, back in the day, use a T5 Gila for electric, I think it was. It went for 1.5 to 2 billion ISK, something like that. But then when the Surgical Strike update happened, it made it so that I had to go from C-type multi-spectrum shield hardeners to A-types. You see, there's a C-type multi-spectrum shield hardeners. These guys, I used a lot of these back in the day, but then when this update occurred, I had to upgrade to B and A types, because just the resists they provided were a lot less than they did before to be able to get required tank. So across the board, this will make Abyss sites a lot easier. So this has both implications on like the Abyss loot. I think that it could make so that the Abyss loot now is going to go a bit down in price because it's going to be a bit easier to do, and especially the higher tiers as well is going to be a bit less ISK probably, because it's going to be hard or easier to do because you're going to be able to tank easier, and if you're able to tank easier, you might have more room to add a bit more DPS in your ships. But primarily tanking will be easier, and this will make so that there's going to be more loot and make it a bit more accessible to other people. So I think that especially like the high tier Abyss, that's going to be perhaps altered a bit, and it will also affect the lower tier Abyss. But the big change, I think, is a higher tier Abyss where people bling their ships hard. They're going to be a lot stronger, going to feel a lot meatier, and make it a lot easier to do. And I think the T4 ships, especially, I feel like that's the sweet spot of getting like a relatively cheap ship, but still being able to do them and earn a good amount of ISK. Like, I've been trying to recently, I've been figuring, I haven't shown you guys a whole lot of this, but I've been off camera just testing for myself, trying to find good fits for T4 Abyss that are around the 500 million ISK region. And I think that now that this surgical strike update is going to be reverted, it's going to be a lot easier because we're going to be able to get ships that are going to still be able to tank a lot, but they're going to be able to do the sites decently. So I think especially the T4 Abyss, where you don't need to have so much DPS, really just what is required to get them done is to have a decent amount of tank. It's going to be really easy, and I look forward to being able to do these high tier Abysses in not so crazily expensive ships. But on the other hand, it might make the loot, as I said before, worth a bit less. So it's a bit of ups and downs, you know, it can't be too easy, it can't be too easy. But then on the other hand, it's going to make so that what you get is going to be even out. So sort of the risk and reward is going to even out like it usually always does in EVE. There's another aspect of the Abyss that I was also thinking is that it might be, when it comes to Abyssal ganks, it might be a little bit less profitable for the Abyssal gankers to gank people. But on the other hand, it could be that there's more Abyssal gankers, because if there are more people doing the higher tier Abyss, it might mean that, okay, people finally have like plucked the courage to do the higher tier Abyss because their ships will be a bit more stronger now, and they might think that, oh, now it's actually worth for me to bling my ship. Because I know that there's a lot of people who comment on the videos that I make is that, oh, I'm too afraid to do the high tier Abyss, I don't want to risk it all. But I think might be now that they're going to be, you know, buffing the modules, it might be that, okay, now they finally pluck the courage to risk a little bit of ISK to do the high tier Abyss. So that could also be an aspect that might make it so that people will gank them more, because there'll be more high tier Abyss sites being run all over the place, again reducing the loot. But I mean, I think it might, in some way, make it a lot less profitable to run the high tier Abyss, because people will be still not having to have those A-type modules or extremely expensive modules as much. Like me personally, I love to use pretty cheap ships to run T4 Abyss, so it'll be even easier for me to do that now. So I think that might be a little bit cheaper ships still going out, but I think that overall there's going to be a lot more high tier Abyss being run with this new update or this reversion of the surgical strike. So it'll be very interesting to see how this unfolds. Another aspect of this that I think that is important to take a look at are the filaments, because the filaments are something that often correlates with how much Abyss sites are being done. I know, now I'm not trying to like brag here that, oh, my videos are so influential, but I know that the Raging Firestorms, when I made a video about Hybrid Gila that was pretty cheap previous summer, it went from one day to 200k ISK to like 500,000 ISK, almost 700k ISK. So I think that stuff that is being done around can easily influence the price of Abyssal filaments. As you can see here, it's gone down to back where it was at before. But the thing is, like, these often like change depending on what's going on, when the updates happen. This is when I made that video right here around this time, around these times here, this period. But there's also a guy, he made a video, Loput is his name, he made a Frigate Abyss doing retributions and a deacon, like a very strong setup he demonstrated on YouTube. And he also made the cataclysmic electrical filaments. He made these go a lot up in price. My prediction is that the filaments, they might go up in price because there's going to be more people running the higher tier Abysses, meaning that there's more demand. It's going to be more like, oh, please sell our filaments. We want to, or please, we want to buy filaments, so that they'll be wanting to get filaments. So my guess is that these cataclysmic electricals, which actually are quite a low spot right now, that you see here, previously in the year, they were like a 50, 60 million. Now we're like quite a low point in their price history. So I think that when this update drops, they're going to be going up, because these are quite easy filaments to run in that it's easy to get good tank. They have like a very, you'll get a good capacitor bonus, so it's easier to fuel your tank. Another one is also these exotics. These exotics, they're pretty bad in terms of the loot, unfortunately, but these are usually pretty fast sized to do, and it'll be easier then to tank, so I think these will also go up quite a bit. Like the bottleneck in exotics isn't your DPS, it's usually your tank. So I think that these will go up a lot because like Gilas, they do a lot of kinetic damage, and then what they need, they're able to get through these sites pretty quickly compared to other filaments, like the missiles and drones. Drones do high amount of damage. The kinetic drones, the missiles, they do a lot of kinetic damage as well. So I think that the tank on them is really something that will be determining sort of the ease or the barrier of entry to get into these, not the DPS. So I think that these also definitely will go up, maybe even more than electrals actually. So I think that these filaments are especially important to keep an eye on, because I think that they could perhaps go up by quite a big degree, and also the chaotics as well. Like these, if people who are not as risky or want to go for the T6, you can always go for the T5s, a lot more lenient, especially the T4s. They're a lot more forgiving. Ragings, I feel like they're going to go up a lot, so just wait and see. Another aspect of this update that I think that is also very interesting to take into consideration is particularly what I mentioned before with Frigate Abyss and small tier Abyss. That is actually probably, I would even say that's more important than the previous points I've mentioned, or at least when it comes to this surgical strike update having an impact on how easy it is to run them. Because often I realize that when it comes to Frigate Abyss, you need a big amount of buffer. You need a big amount of buffer often to be able to survive these wrecking shots, at least in high tier Abyss and doing frigate sites, in destroyer sites. Because those ships, they don't usually have a big amount of buffer, unlike cruisers. And often when you're going high tiers, you're up against rats like Charybdis Tyrannos, who can do very high alpha damage in wrecking shots, and you want to have that buffer to be able to do them reliably. If you don't have enough buffer, sooner or later you're going to die. Even you can have a really good HP per second, have a really good ability to speed tank. If you get hit by a wrecking shot, which can happen regardless of how fast you're going, your transversal, you will die and you'll lose your whole setup. So increasing the resist profile is going to first off make us be more tankier in our ships, but also what I think is even more importantly is that we're going to be having a bigger buffer. And that'll be really cool to see what's going to happen right there. Because ships, like a ship I love to use for the T4s, the T4 Darks, is the Social Jackdaw right here, what I call the Social Jackdaw. It's a pretty chill fit. It's used to just do T4 Darks, very relaxing. Very relaxingly, goes really smoothly. Usually your time you've got is very like a big margin, get good loot. You've got very tanky with this remote rep right here and this B-type medium shield booster. Now, with the new update, we're going to have even more resists. We're going to have this multi-spectrum shield hardener I put right here. It's going to be even stronger. And I think I don't know if the rigs are going to be affected, but at least the multi-spectrum shield hardener is going to provide more resists. So that will be something that I'm really looking forward to. The T4 size is going to be even easier to do. It's going to be a lot more chill because there is the Jackdaw has actually enough buffer to survive the wrecking shots of T4 ships. So it's not that big of a deal, but it's going to especially be if you're going to use like retribution setups in T5 plus, you're going to be having a very good time there. It's going to be so much easier to survive with the good resists you've got, because there I don't feel like in Frigate Abyss you need more HP per second. I think you need more resists, because resists increase buffer and also increase your HP per second indirectly because you're increasing your resist. That's the main, I think one of the more important ways to increase tank with Frigate and Destroyer Abyss is increasing resists actually. Because the resists I feel a lot more important on frigates and destroyers than they are on cruisers in the Abyss, particularly for that buffer reason. So those are the changes that are going to be occurring. We're going to be getting some surgical strike updates. Initially a nerf to capital ships, but capital ships further got nerfed. Now we're getting then a partial reversion of that update. And I think that this has big implications, and one of them, or two of them that CCP mentions is for wormholes and LOSEC. But for me personally, I think it's going to affect Abyss a lot. Frigate Abyss, Destroyer Abyss is going to become a lot more easier. High tier Abyss is going to be a lot easier. There's going to be maybe more people running high tier Abyss, or at least there's probably going to be more people running high tier Abyss, but also more expensive fits out on the grid are going to be risked because of the less risk in the PvE. Perhaps making Abyssal Gankers have a bit more fun to have, and also perhaps making it so that T4 fits and sort of cheapo fits are a little bit more viable in the higher tiers as well, like T4, maybe even T5. So it'll be just interesting to see what happens. It'll be interesting to see what happens because I really want to I love for me personally, what I'm most looking forward to is to be able to just use like cheap fits to do T4, maybe even T5, but primarily T4 ships or T4 filaments. That's a sweet spot in my opinion. And so we'll also have to keep an eye on the Abyss filament market because I think it'll explode when this update goes. Or maybe it won't change at all, but I think that since Abyss will be a lot easier to run, people will be demanding a lot, or there's going to be a lot higher demand for the filaments. We're going to be seeing those prices explode right there. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. That's enough for now. If you did enjoy the video, please leave a like and subscribe. I'll catch you guys later.